Post-combat, now we're in second main phase.
And welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Second Main Phase podcast, brought to you by Team Main Phase and our wonderful sponsors, the Man of Vault and Kangaroo Tales. I am one of your regular co-hosts. My name is Jason Cornell, and my good buddy Doug Bailey is our other regularly scheduled co-host. Doug, how's it going today?
Hello, I'm doing pretty fine.
Just pretty fine. That's it. No great, amazing, terrible.
Yeah, I've had some dog difficulties.
Yeah, new pet parent here, so we're working out the.
Yeah, me and Chowder, we're arguing at this time. She likes to think that the whole apartment is a place where she can pee, and I strongly disagree.
That is, yeah, puppies and potty training is probably. Has she figured out a good sleeping schedule, or is that all over the place too?
Oh no, that's fine now. It's just every time I don't pay attention to her, she decides to pee.
Okay, that's a interesting way to act out, I suppose. But puppies are puppies.
You gotta fight the man somehow, you know what I mean?
All right, so what are we going to talk about today? I think we've got some Strixhaven lined up for the people.
I thought we would use this time, since we have all the spoilers now, to do like a limited seal review outside looking in. I know we haven't got our hands on it yet, but I think there's a lot of insight you can glean from just looking at the cards based off previous draft sets and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think it's, one of the big focuses for us has been trying to get the listeners and everybody kind of prepared for the events that are coming up. So if we're RCQ season, definitely stores are going to be running sealed RCQs. So it's a good time to maybe kind of think of this as a little launching point for everybody, and kind of flex some of those limited skills, I think. So yeah, you're right that we haven't had a whole lot of hands-on experience yet with these, but there's a lot that you can kind of compare this to some of the other sets, and just having those experience with some limited.
I did do a couple drafts on Draftmancer
Mm-hmm.
with a couple teammates and stuff like that, but I mean, I really need to have like 20, 30 drafts under my belt before I truly understand the format. But I did get a lot of good insights, and definitely this format seems like it could be on the grindier side.
Mm-hmm. If you're not doing some of that, practice on Draftmancers, just do it. It's free, it's easy, and it's a good way to kind of just see some of those cards moving in packs, and kind of get used to that. So good
Yeah.
resource for people out there.
Yeah, everyone loves playing games afterwards on cockatrice. It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so let's what so we've done a few kind of quick little drafts like that. What's your overall impressions? What do you think so far?
First of all, I think this draft set's very fun. I think so far it seems like it's going to be very grindy, but I do think that there's one archetype in particular that goes underneath all the other mid-range decks if built correctly, and what we'll talk about a little later. But when I say grindy, I mean that there's a lot of value in the set, right? We already talked about last episode that there's the prepared cards that have creatures and spells. There's a lot of fixing for multicolored decks to perform well, and even push for converged decks. And there's a lot of powerful 5+ CMC spells that are built into 2-for-1s when combined with creatures. And it seems like it's going to be a lot of fun, and a lot of good back and forth grindy Magic, which is, I know, one of your favorite ways to play Magic.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
this set does look pretty awesome, and I think you're right. I think that it does seem like there's going to be kind of a lot of 2-for-1s, and we say that maybe with a lot of sets, and everything's kind of a 2-for-1, or a creature always has these enter the battlefield triggers. We'll kind of get to that a little bit more, I think, when we kind of start breaking down some of the mechanics a little bit. But I do think you're right. I do think that there's going to be a lot of happening. There's going to be a lot of some grindy elements, a lot of card advantage, a lot of things that are going to be, happening. That's going to make these games kind of drag out. And yeah, I mean, I do like these types of games. I do like limited a lot. I really like, kind of getting just simple but elegant Magic, I guess maybe is how I would describe it.
Yeah, Simple but elegant. If that's what mid-range mirrors are, I don't think they're elegant personally. It's just
Yeah.
a lot of let's see if I draw it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But I will say that one thing that I noticed is like I think they've gotten a lot better about this in the last couple of years in playing limited. Is that the bombs are not as hard. They're not as hard hitting. They're not as strong as they used to be. And I feel like when I was drafting, I was often picking uncommons over rares a lot of the times.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think you're kind of onto something there. I definitely they've gotten better at managing the rares so they're not just so warping. There's a couple sets not too long ago that were like that. That was just like you opened a rare and just there wasn't anything that could beat it. They're getting a lot better at including commons and uncommons that beat the really strong rares. Just 4 mana unconditional exile your thing or something. Like those types of
Yeah.
cards are now commons and they're very regularly in sets so that when you open some mythic dragon that really warps the game, you all right, I can spend my 4 mana sorcery and just deal with that. So yeah, that's a good point.
I also think that like a lot of the rares and a lot of the cards in general are very synergistic as well. Like
Hmm.
to the point that like you might have a rare that's like probably not that good, but if you're already in a certain angle, if it's pack two, pick one even if it's not as strong as some of the other some of the uncommons in the set. I found myself doing that a lot as well,
Hmm.
or like seeing certain uncommons be free in pack seven, switching immediately to a different color combination off of the cues of someone else. Because if you had the synergistic uncommons of the set, I feel like if you have a bunch like four or five of those in your deck and zero rares, I feel like you're going to be more successful than someone with rares in their deck but not a synergistic.
So do you think that this is going to be a set where um, sometimes you have the oops all power level deck and then you have the deck that's like high synergy? Do we have kind of a sense maybe where we think that this Strixhaven set lands? Is it more about just building, staying open, find the open lane, and then once you figure out what school you're in, are you just kind of staying on that trajectory?
I think this set lands in two categories. Either one, you start with a very powerful card and go all in on the synergy, or two, you have a bunch of bombs and try to make it work with converge.
Okay.
So like the way I see it, I think so far there's six archetypes that I've figured out so far.
Mhm.
The lore holds, which is the red white mid range, silver quill, which is black white aggro, the Prismari, which is blue red spells, the Wither Bloom, which is black green life gain mid range, the Quandrex, which is blue green ramp slash spells, and then finally the Converge, which is like the 4 to 5 color or even 3 color soup piles, usually stemming from green, but can
Yeah.
be used from other colors based off what you get.
Okay. So that's kind of gives you a little bit of what the schools, what the different color pairs are trying to do. Let's go through maybe a couple of these mechanics, make sure that everybody kind of understands how those work, and kind of start with that.
One of the first mechanics we kind of talked about a little bit on the last podcast was the prepare mechanic. A creature either enters the battlefield prepared, or you have to meet a certain mechanic to prepare the spell. And when the condition is met, it allows you to cast the spell by paying its mana cost.
Mhm.
So we talked about the mascot of this mechanic, which were the
Emeritus cycle. Yeah, we touched on the Emeritus cycle a little bit last time, but that's right. We didn't have the black one spoiled yet. So now that we've got it here, it's probably a good point for us to kind of just go ahead and knock that one out. So, prepared mechanic, the Black Emeritus of Woe is what that one's called. It's
Mhm.
three and a black for a 5/4 vampire warlock. This creature enters prepared at the beginning of your instep. If two or more creatures died this turn, this creature becomes prepared. And the spell that's attached to it is none other than Demonic Tutor. One in a black sorcery, search your library for a card, put it in your hand, and then shuffle. So this is a good point to kind of call out too, what you mentioned earlier about how the set feels kind of grindy. There's just a lot of prepared creatures. There's a lot of these cards that
Mhm.
just have another spell attached to it, and it's not just a one-time spell like maybe like
An
the
adventure.
an adventure, exactly right. So I can meet this condition multiple times and get this spell multiple times, right? So this one card potentially could represent multiple cards of value if I can kind of continue to meet the conditions. So yeah, what do you think about this or kind of the prepared mechanic?
Wizards did a very good job of like having the prepared mechanic like on the specific creatures match like what the color is trying to do, right? And a lot of the white creatures prepared have spells that trigger the Silver Quill mechanics or the Lower Hurl mechanics and so on and so forth. So I think they've really done a very good job of trying to get people to go into lanes, which is kind of why at the beginning I feel like the best way to draft so far is to pick your lane early and stick with it.
Hmm.
And this card is more of a power level card. I think this card is what we
Yeah.
consider a bomb unlimited for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, a repeatable demonic tutor effect just sounds insane, right? I could fight all my bombs plus the re-prepared mechanic of it. It's pretty
Hmm.
easy, right?
Yeah, that's
If
not too hard to
you
trigger.
Yeah, if you swing with a creature and the creature's trade, boom, you can next
Yeah.
turn demonic tutor again. And if you're
Yeah.
already pressuring the life total, they might be forced into it, and then you're going to find a removal spell off your deck next turn, or find your other busted bomb and be able to get value that way. I think this card's insane,
Yeah, this
insane.
it reads super duper well because just for the creature side of it, I guess if you want to call it that, 4 mana for 5/4. No abilities, but that's just fine. Like I'm fine with having that, and it because it enters prepared. So either you have 6 mana and you can immediately demonic tutor, or you could play your 4 mana 5/4, probably could survive and untap, and then you get to use your demonic tutor, go get another 3 drop. Assuming you have 5 mana now, right? So you spend two for
Hmm.
your tutor and 3 for that. But yeah, like you said, just one creature trading in combat with one of their creatures just lets you re-prepare this, and I think that feels very strong. It feels like this could be very good. Like this, like yeah, like you said, just bomb level kind of card here.
I think it's one of the few bombs that are in the set right now that don't require like a synergistic piece for it to go off. This deck, this card, rather, asks very little of you for it to get an insane effect, and I think it'll just take over most late game situations, even mid game situations, if we have a lot of mana to work with.
Yeah, so I think a good thing to be able to look out for when you're looking at those sealed or drafts is these prepared creatures and having a good plan for utilizing that spell that's attached to it and be able to kind of get that a lot.
Now, I will say you did say that it was repeatable. It's not always repeatable. Some of them only become prepared when they enter.
Hmm.
Now, if you have like a bounce effect, like Daydream or something like that, then you'll be able to re-prepare them. But
Hmm.
usually, only most of the rares and uncommons have a way to re-prepare. Most of the commons are into the battlefield usually.
Okay, so with the prepared thing, are there ways in the set that if a creature has a prepared thing, is there a way that I can re-prepare it? I guess right. Isn't there some optionality there in within the draft format?
Yeah, there's two actually. There's one that's a land. It's called a Sky Coach Waypoint.
Hmm.
It's a colorless land that enters untapped. You can tap it for a colorless, and then for three, and then you tap it. A target creature becomes prepared.
Okay. Okay. So like for a good example is the Elite Interceptor, right? That's the kind of new Thraben Inspector. For those following at home, that's one for a 1/2. This creature enters prepared, and its spell is Rejoiner, something like that. And so that's a 2 mana sorcery that you may tap or untap target creature and draw a card, right? So it's sort of just like a cheap body that can you can kind of get this cantrip type card out of it. So this is something that you can re-prepare, even though it doesn't have a way to naturally do that itself.
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure. It's going to be a very good card depending on your deck. I don't know if it's going to be a close to a pack one pick winnable,
Mhm.
obviously, but I think it's going to be something that people are going to draw to in like the packs like 5 through 9 to fill out their deck for sure. There's also another way that you can prepare and unprepare without meeting the conditions. It's actually in a creature. It's called a Biblioplex Tomb Keeper.
Okay.
It is a 4 mana colorless artifact creature construct, 3/4. When it enters the battlefield, choose up to one. Either target creature becomes prepared or target creature becomes unprepared. So it can also give you another way to stop your opponent from casting a prepared spell as well.
Okay. That's kind of cool. I kind of like a little counterplay there with your opponents played something, hoping that they get to untap with their prepared creature, and you can kind of snipe that with your 4 drop.
Yeah, for sure. The body isn't very intriguing and very interesting, but I feel like it does the job. I think most decks are going to want at least one copy of this in their deck. especially if they have really good prepared creatures in the uncommon slot or rare spot.
Yeah, pretty good. Like you said, bounce effects, flicker effects, things like that that might exist. Those are all pretty nice with some of these prepared cards too. So, yeah, I think those are going to be a lot of powerful cards that are going to be in the set, just because of this, 2-for-1 kind of nature for them. So that was the prepared mechanic. Anything else before we want to jump to the next thing?
Yeah, Biblioplex, that's going to be hard to say. Try to say that 3 times. Biblioplex, Biblioplex,
Biblioplex,
Biblioplex.
tomb, tome keeper. Yeah, yeah.
See, Tome Keeper is easier to
It's
do. It's
fine, but
the
like the whole thing is a mouthful, right?
It reminds me of Spanish tax, a biblioteca. Donde la
Yeah,
está la biblioteca, right? Is
yeah.
that right? People who speak Spanish, make sure I'm right or wrong, please.
Please don't tell us how dumb we are.
No,
um,
please. I don't want to stay ignorant. I really don't.
all right, so that was prepared. So next one is repertoire or now you've got me all tongue tied with these
Repartee.
repartee. Yeah. So the other
Repartee.
mechanic that was silver quill, right? This is kind of their keyword repartee, and that is so whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a creature, an effect happens. So you target your guy with giant growth, you get some other sort of benefit. The repertory is really just for your stuff, right? Like it's just when you target your thing, kind of, right? Is that how that mostly
No,
works?
that actually is not how it works. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
whenever you target a creature with an instant or sorcery. So
Hmm.
if you remove your opponent's creature with a removal spell, it will trigger your repartee spells as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and it's just instant sorceries, so no enchantments, no ETB effects will trigger it. Only instants and sorceries.
Okay. And how do we think that this kind of mechanic stacks up in limited? Is this is really what Silver Quill is kind of all about? This is their jam for this set. Does this feel like I'm already casting giant growth on my guy? Do some of these effects really feel like that's kind of worth doing, or are we jumping through some extra hoops here for not a lot of extra?
I feel like the repartee mechanic is actually very busted
Hmm.
because not only does it give you value when you remove your opponent's creatures, but like the effects that the colors have available to it to trigger it are also very nice and very synergistic with the cards. For example, the one drop that you were talking about a second ago, the Elite Interceptor. I think that is one of the premier commons for the Silver Quill deck because not only does it apply pressure very well, but it triggers Repartee very well and gives you a card. For example, if I have a card that says Repartee, when put a counter on a creature, I can tap my opponent's creature and draw a card, and I increase my clock by one. Like that's huge. If I have a couple creatures that say Repartee, a target creature gets tapped, right? Again, I can like pump my creature, get a bunch of other triggers, and be able to present a huge board state. I feel like it just increases the amount, the capability of your deck to have 2-for-1s,
Hmm.
and it kind of makes your opponent play in a way that's kind of hard to tap out, especially if they have a lot of the ways to trigger it or pump spells, like you said.
Okay, that's cool. I kind of like this. It's a good spin on traditionally trying to giant growth your guy in limited is kind of not good. We go to combat. I attack with my 2/2. You block with your 3/3. I try to giant growth my guy, and you use like a removal spell. Your one removal spell has killed my creature and my giant growth. You've just two
Mhm.
for one me. That's generally a negative in limited. So you try not to really do a lot of pump spells or something similar to that because of that nature. I like that this mechanic lets us, it cares about when I target my opponent's creature. This feels like a lot stronger than I would have initially at first glance. Another good example, another kind of interesting card that has this mechanic, Informed Ink Right. It's a rare, it's 2 mana, so one and a white for a 2/2 vigilance. Whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell that targets a creature, create a 1/1 white and black inkling creature token with flying. So, like, now all of a sudden my 2 drop is paying me off every time I kill one of your creatures. That's kind of a
Mhm.
big deal. I kind of like this mechanic a lot more now, kind of thinking about it through that lens, and it makes the spell that's attached to the creature, tap a thing, draw a card. All of a sudden now that's like really huge because now I've got a tempo bonus, I've gone an extra card, and I've made some extra body along the way. All of that kind of lines up really nicely in a really really nice synergistic
Yeah,
package.
it kind of feels like a 3-for-1 because
Hmm.
like if I have a creature that's prepared, like if I trigger Repartee, I got a creature, a spell, and a Repartee trigger all for one piece of cardboard, which is kind of huge. And I think all the colleges, all the two-color pairs are really good about trying to get multiple pieces of value from one piece of cardboard, which is another reason why I think this format's going to be pretty grindy.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, I mean, not every reperty trigger is going to be worth a full card, but a
Hmm.
lot of them are going to be pretty close to it, and yeah, like you said, that's it's now it's 3-for-1 or even more in some cases potentially. So that feels like a pretty strong place to put some power, and I like that because it's kind of different than most limited formats where the example that I use, you try to giant growth your guy and you get hit with a rule spell, and that
Yeah.
you're kind of feeling pretty bad after that.
Yeah, you set yourself up for a 2-for-1, which the Repartee you can still get, sometimes get if they remove it, you can get 1-for-1, but like or 2-for-1 in some instances. But I think the likelihood of getting lots of value from one card is very high with this mechanic, and I definitely think it's something that people should keep an eye on. And if you have a good Orzhov build, Orzhov rare or good Orzhov uncommon, and pack one, pick one, I'm pretty comfortable going into this color pair, especially because of this mechanic.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so that's repartee. Next, we've got is infusion, right? And this
Mhm.
is the green black school, which is Witherbloom.
Yep, Witherbloom.
I
Yep.
paid attention in class. Okay, I didn't sleep through all of my class.
Didn't
Okay,
seem like it. It didn't seem like it.
I was making sure you know. Okay, uh,
Oh, okay. I see. I see. I
so
see. Okay.
infusion's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward, right? So that's just if you gain life this turn, you get some sort of benefit or bonus. Um, and that's pretty much it, right? So just as long as you gain life, you get an extra little something on top for it.
I think one of the main examples for this is Withering Curse, which is the mythic rare and black one black black sorcery that all creatures get -2/-2 till end of turn.
Hmm.
But it has infusion. If you gain life this turn, destroy all creatures instead.
Okay, that's a pretty big upgrade.
So I would say that the infusion is just like a replacement effect if you gain life, and a lot of them are very very powerful. But one of the things that like keeps me putting infusion not as high as like say Repartee is you need to gain life frequently with the infusion for it to be effective, and
Hmm.
there's not a lot of ways to constantly gain life every turn.
Yeah, that feels like kind of a little extra hoop that you have to jump through. That's
Hmm.
maybe not quite as easy. Um, yeah, I can see how that can be a little tricky. Yeah, you it seems like a simple thing, but it does seem like it's kind of hard to regularly kind of trigger that. And there's not a lot of just I don't know tap and gain one life or something, right? Like to really set you up for that. So that'll be interesting to see how that one plays out.
Yeah, there is one artifact that jumps in my head that gains life every turn. The Potioner's Trove. It's an artifact, 3 mana, 3 generic, obviously artifact. You can either tap it for 1 mana of any color, or you can tap it to gain 2 life. You only activate if you've cast an instant or sorcery this turn.
Okay, so I've got to cast a spell. Then I
Yep.
can. Okay, so can I put my Withering Curse on the stack, hold priority? I've cast a spell, and then activate my thing to gain life, and then my Withering Curse will now kill everything.
Yes.
Okay,
And
that feels like a pretty hard
yeah,
to set up, though.
we'll talk about it more when we talk about each archetype. But Witherbloom does have ways to either gain life consistently by making pest tokens,
Hmm.
which are 1/1s that when they attack you gain life, or having creatures that have ETBs gain life. But
Yeah.
again, if your opponent has decent removal uh, and you don't have a frequent draw of creatures that ETB gain life, it could be a problem. But again, I think that if you can get it to trigger every turn or every other turn, that the infusion cards are very strong.
Yeah, so you're gonna have a lot of spots where your opponent's gonna attack you with their pest, and you're just gonna be like, "All right, no blocks." Like you're just can't block because whatever what you just can't let them gain life probably for some of their spells.
No, no. It's whenever it attacks.
Oh, the pest, these pests just when it attacks, it gains the life. Okay,
Yes, when
all
it
right, so
attacks
never
against
mind.
a life. So you're going to be blocking the heck out of
We're
those
gonna be blocking
pests.
those bad
Exact
boys.
opposite. Don't listen
Okay,
to Jason. Kill the pest. Don't
block the
listen.
pest. Got
Block the pest. Don't let it stay around.
him. Yeah.
Kill that thing.
I guess I was thinking of the best from the first time around in Strixhaven, right? Because the
Yeah.
first ones were one ones that when they died, they had a trigger that gained one life.
Yes. This one is when they attack.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, I don't love Infusion so far compared to the other two. Um, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Next up, we've got Flashback. So Flashback is
Mhm.
back. Everybody loves Flashback. Yay!
Yeah, it feels like deja vu, almost like a flashback.
Wait, really? And so, yeah, if you don't happen to know, flashback is a cost that you can pay for a spell. When it's in the graveyard, you can cast it for its flashback cost. Pretty straightforward. Just you get two copies or two instances of it. Um, where does this kind of feel like it falls in line with what's going on in the set?
Again, it just points to the fact that this set is very grindy because your spells are going to have two different costs and have two different effects and do different parts of the game, right? I think it's a great way to trigger the Laura Hold effect, which is Laura Hold tries to get value from cards leave the graveyard. So this is a
Hmm.
good way to trigger that. And it's also a good way to trigger the Opus, which is whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell, you have an effect, and then if you pay 5 or more mana to cast that spell, you can get a upgraded version of the Opus.
Yeah.
So flashback is going to be a very good way to trigger our Opuses. Uh, and when I say stronger, so for example, one of the Opus cards says whenever you cast a spell, deal 1 damage. But if you spent 5 or more mana to cast that spell, it does 3 damage instead. It's like the infusion alternate cost, but you still get something even if it's not CNC 5 or greater on average.
Okay. Yeah, it does feel like they did a good job setting up the set so that the colleges, the different schools, the color pairs sort of have a little overlap to enable each other so that
Mhm.
you're not when you're going through the draft, you're like, "Oh, well I ended up with all my lore hold cards, but none of the rest of my deck doesn't really care about, stuff leaving the graveyard." Um so, flashback triggering your opus stuff, but also, your lore hold cares about that. So all your red cards now work good in your red white school, and they also work in the blue red school. So it feels like they really did a good job kind of lining some of that up and picking mechanics that split the difference both ways.
Yeah, that's definitely something that's improved in the set so far in my limited amount of games with it. I definitely felt like in Bloomborough, for example, that if you got stuck with one side of the color pair, you were just kind of SOL.
Hmm.
And I feel like they've really kind of took that feedback and was able to make a pretty good set that prevents that as best it can.
Yeah, you're gonna have some tough times where it's not gonna quite line up like that, but yeah, you know addressing those issues ahead of time and being aware of that and designing the set around it looks pretty good. This does feel like they went in the right direction here.
Yeah, the safety measures are there for sure to
Mhm.
prevent that from happening, and you can definitely see it in the design. And I think that's a big kudos to them on the designing of the set for sure.
Absolutely, yeah, thumbs up. So that's kind of we lumped flashback and opus there together. Opus, just to kind of really quick retouch that, just casting an instant or sorcery, you get the effect if you spent 5 mana or greater on that, you get some extra bonus on top of it. So,
Yeah, it's mostly for the Prismari
mhm.
decks, really the blue red decks, blue red spells.
Imagine that is it wants to play lots of spells.
Yeah, who would have thought? Is it wanted
Yeah.
to play instants and sorceries? Yeah, I and one keyword that's really interesting with Opus, it doesn't say CMC, it says the amount of mana spent to cast it.
Right,
So
right.
like your free force of wills, like your 5 mana force of wills you cast for free will not trigger it.
Yeah,
In later formats, all those free spells with CMC that are higher or things like Leyline Binding in Modern, they won't trigger Opus. It has to be
yeah.
you spend 5 mana to cast your spell.
Actually checks how much mana was spent to cast the
Mhm.
spell, so you cannot archive trap people and get your opus bonus.
Yeah, yeah, Jason, that's
Yeah,
correct.
because that's how it
Yeah, we
works, right?
definitely. Yeah, that's the thing it works.
All
Yeah,
right.
but no, like you said, because of that fact, Opish and Flashback kind of go hand in hand together for
Yeah,
sure.
it's a nice overlap there for sure. Increment's up next. Increment is whenever you cast a spell, if the amount of mana you spent is greater than this creature's power or toughness, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So it's kind of like evolved from past sets, pretty similar to that.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Return to Ravnica Evolve mechanic, except a creature entering causing it to grow. It's a spell being cast, which makes
Mhm.
it a lot easier. And it doesn't say instant source like the other ones. It says spell.
Oh,
So
specifically spell. Okay. Yep.
yeah, it specifically says spell. Does not see instant sorceries like the other mechanics. So if I have a 1/1 with increment and I cast a 2 drop, it becomes a 2/2. I cast a 3 drop, it's a 3/3. I cast a 4 drop, it's a 4/4, so on and so forth.
Mhm.
So this is definitely a mechanic that kind of goes in the opposite of how we've been feeling about the set, because I feel like this mechanic is a lot better the earlier it's cast. Like
Mhm.
I feel like this is not good late game. It's usually only going to be good in the early to mid game when you can
Yeah.
set it up. Uh, this is one of the mechanics that goes with Quandrix. This is their like main mechanic. I think it's very intuitive and very well designed. I'm kind of excited to see how good it ends up being. It's not going to be a good top deck. It's definitely going to be something that you need to set up early.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely pays you or sort of incentivizes you for curving these things into each other. You know, starting with the one mana creature that would have increment or some kind of 2 drop that has it, and then as you play the game, naturally that 2 drop now continually gets stronger and stronger as the game goes, and that's really fits into how you want to use that mechanic. But yeah, like you said, if you've got this weaker 2 drop that really relies on you playing multiple spells, you draw that later in the game. Now all of a sudden that 2 drop is worse than your average top deck or something. Maybe that's kind of an interesting mechanic, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I would have to see how it goes, but definitely has a very high ceiling but a very low floor.
Yeah, if I remember right from Return to Ravnica, I feel like Evolve was not great there. Like it was used a little bit, but I don't remember it being an all star in that format. If that remembers right.
Yeah, the 1 drops are really good in that set. Like
Yeah.
Experiment One is very good in
Yeah.
that set, if I remember correctly.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, again, those cards were like very good if you were able to curve out. I don't know if the format's going to be like that. Like we've been saying this entire podcast, it feels like it's going to be grinding, and if that ends up being the truth as we play more and more of it, then this increment could be really detrimental. But if you have a nice curve, I feel like it could be pretty unbeatable.
So we got two more kind of mechanics here to get through. We got Converge and Paradigm. Converge
Mhm.
is kind of powers up when you're casting a spell. So it checks how much what colored mana was used to cast the spell, and the more you use, the kind of the better the spell is. Is that sort of a good quick little
Mhm.
summary?
It's kind of like I believe that mechanic Sunburst, where
Hmm.
you get like so pretty much it checks what color manas was used to cast it. So a good example of this card, I think like the hallmark of this ability is Together as One, the 6 drop colorless sorcery from this set. It's 6 generic for sorcery converge. Target player draws X cards. And it deals X damage to any target, and you gain X life, where X is the amount of color of mana spent to cast a spell.
Okay.
So if you spent one of each color, at least one of each color to cast a spell, you'll gain 5, draw 5, deal 5.
That's pretty good. Yeah. This is a rare also, by the way. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think this is kind of a good hallmark. They've used some kind of mechanics like this before. We've seen some, I care about multicolor. Radiant, I think, was the other one that was
Mhm.
something similar to that, and we've had some
Yes.
other things kind of close to that. This looks pretty good. I think that the way that this format looks, the way that this set looks, I think you're going to have some of these green 5 color soup decks that are going to work out being pretty good, and you're going to have a lot of these converge cards. They're going to be pretty powerful when you can put a lot of that mana together.
I think it's pretty easy to splash like a third color in some decks or a fourth
Hmm.
color even. There's a lot of good fixing in green, for example, that have a lot of ways to find basic lands. And there's the rare lands and the common surveil lands. So I think it'd be pretty easy for most decks to splash third color. And if you are, then like having it 1 or 2 converged cards at the top of your curve could be beneficial, and it
Hmm.
could be pretty powerful for sure.
I also could see it being pretty common practice that let's just say you're in a 2 color pair and you get a off color dual land. So I'm in Prismari, so I'm blue red, and I get the red white the Lorehold land. So now if I happen to have any converged spells, now I just kind of randomly have this extra white source. It's kind of like a mountain that comes with like tapped in my deck that I can kind of use to power up some of my converged stuff if I get a little bit of overlap there in my
Hmm.
Prismari deck. I think that could be a pretty common practice where those enter the battlefield tap. lands could be pretty high picks or pretty useful to like kind of snag up a couple of extra ones as the draft is going. And if you can afford to kind of play a little slower, which it looks like this set is going to lean to that, that maybe having these extra kind of sources could be pretty beneficial.
There's even uncommon green cards like Emil Vaslin's Roamer, which is a 2 and a green legendary creature that 3/3 when creatures you control get +1/+1 counters on them, they have trample. And you can also tap 4 green and Emil to make a X factual token
Mm.
where it gets X +1/+1 counters, where X is equal to the number of differently named lands you control. So there's some mechanics in the set that also reward you for having different named lands.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of another interesting little wrinkle there, where I think that's a good sign of a limited format. Where you've got these other little extra wrinkles like that
Mm.
allow things to kind of overlap, and you've got extra uses for cards other than just, hey, this makes 2 colors of mana
Yeah.
and I'm in those color pairs.
There's also Terramorphic Expanse, which is the Evolving Wilds of the set. We have an Evolving Wilds
Hmm.
that's at the common spot, and we even have a rare, the Great Hall of the Biblioplex. Say that 3 times again. That can that's like can tap for a colorless or tap and pay 1 life to add 1 mana of any color to spend on instants and sorceries. Yeah, so there's fixing at rare, uncommon, and common.
And there's a lot in common. So I do think they went through and made sure that there was a plenty of good support for the converge stuff, and so far that looks like that's going to be a pretty fun archetype to draft or end up in.
I think it's one of those archetypes that you're not gonna like seek out to draft unless you're a psychopath. Um,
Challenge accepted.
I do think it's like one of those that like if you have a bunch of busted rares in different colors, that you can run the base green deck and be able to run all those good cards that you want to run.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how often you deviate from one of the schools into the Converge deck, or maybe even to a color pair that's not one of the schools. You end up in blue white. That's not a supported color pair for this set. Those are also really interesting when that happens, and that gives limited formats a lot of replayability. So I'm be really interested to see how often that happens. I think that maybe my assumption is that a good amount of our sealed decks will probably be a lot of converged soup, maybe because you're not going to have that cohesive strategy where you're going through the draft and I'm only taking strong, red, white, lore hold cards. You're just going to get whatever you get in your sealed. So I think that the sealed formats are going to look a little soup grindy thing, which again is kind of one of the reoccurring themes of the set. So be interested to see where how often that happens in draft, though.
Definitely something that we're going to learn in the next week or two as we help our teammates prepare for the Pro Tour.
Let's hit Paradigm really quick so we can close out the mechanics and we can kind of move on to some of the more specifics of what the color pairs are trying to do and talk about some of those highlighted cards there. So Paradigm is the last mechanic. After you first resolve a spell with the name, you may cast a copy of it from exile without paying its mana cost at the beginning of each of your first main phases. So sorry, that was a bit of a mouthful. Let's try to dissect that in something that makes a little bit more sense for the listeners.
Pretty much, when you cast a spell, you after it resolves, you exile it, and at the beginning of your first main phase each turn, you may cast a copy of it without paying its mana cost.
Okay. So
Uh,
this is kind of like a revisit of Epic from what was it, the Kamigawa block, where we had spells with Epic.
I don't think I was alive then, but
Oh,
I'll take your word for
yeah,
it.
yeah. So this is a retread of the Epic mechanic. So you basically for the rest of the game you get a copy of this spell on your first main phase.
Yeah, so kind of highlight these. The paradigms are only in the mythic lessons.
Mhm.
There's one for each color. There's only 5 with paradigm. So yeah, each of them are all late game trying to be bombs, but I don't think all of them are as strong
Yeah,
as
they're
each
not all
other.
equal here.
Yeah, essentially with the paradigms, they're just going to be all mythics, 5 to 7 mana. They're going to have different power levels. But I think the only paradigm that really catches my fancy is the germination practicum, which is
Mhm.
3 green, put 2 counters on each creature you control at sorcery speed. I find that objectively broken. The ability to make every piece of cardboard matter even more on every turn. In
Mhm.
2 turns, your 1/1's a 5/5. Your 5/5 is now a 9/9. I think this particular paradigm card grows out of control more exponentially than the other ones and requires less setup.
You just kind of naturally just want to play creatures, right? We're playing limited, so as long as I keep
Mhm.
drawing creatures, this is gonna kind of pay me off for a lot of that.
Yeah, because the Restoration Seminar needs creatures in the graveyard. The blue one, which is Echo Casting Symposium, it makes tokens of creatures that you control, right? So you need good creatures to copy to have good effects of that. The Decorium of Dissertation, the black paradigm, it makes you draw 2 cards and lose to life each turn, or target your opponent to do that. That can be kind of hard to keep. Imposition Capstone can sometimes mill you out because it's exiling the top cards until you hit 4 CMC of instant sorceries. So all those other paradigm cards require a certain deck building restriction, a certain power level of your cards. This one just says unique creatures, which every deck wants to do. I think it's absurd.
Yeah. Also, this one starts at 5 mana. It's
Mhm.
the green one and the black one are the only ones at 5 mana. So I kind of like that you get to start it a little earlier. It is kind of almost as like an overrun too, right? You just go 2 drop,
Mhm.
3 drop, 4 drop. Turn 5, you play this, and then it's kind of just like an overrun, really. So this one definitely feels like the green one feels the strongest for sure. Yep. So that's Paradigm. Real quick, last thing. What's your favorite mechanic? Do you have one of these that you think we like the most? Is it you can answer that any way you want, whether it's power or flavor.
I think repartee is the one that catches my eye. I think this mechanic
Yeah.
is very, very good and requires very little setup compared to the rest of the ones. Uh, my second favorite would be Opus because, again, for the same reason, it requires a less amount of setup to get going, and both of those I feel can really take over early game, mid game, late game, any part of the of where we're at in the turn cycle.
hmm I agree. I really like the repartee. I think that is a really good way that make pump spells matter and make sort of these other things that we want to do in limited that have kind of historically been bad to kind of highlight those and make them better or make it worth doing some of that. I think mine would still just be kind of sticking with the prepared thing. I like kind of real bread and butter, really straightforward. This is my adventure card, and so those all feel pretty strong to me. So
You're only saying that because it's casting spells of old, and you feel nostalgic.
yeah, yeah, I get
You
to
just
cast demonic tutor. It literally says demonic tutor right there. Ancestral
It
recall.
does.
It says it right
Yeah,
there.
you're psycho.
All right, so we've talked about some mechanics. Let's jump into each of these color pairs here. Um, Quick run through. So Lorehold is our red white guild that we've talked about. Guild,
Mhm,
school. I'll use those terminologies kind of interchangeably. Lorehold is kind of a mid range deck, and its big thing is caring about stuff leaving the graveyard, right?
mhm.
So flashbacks, those kind of things are how Lorehold is going to get some of those value kind of pulled out of it. What's the kind of signpost uncommon here? What is this? All right, I'm going to start looking at my lore hold. How do I know if I have a good lore hold sealed? What am I looking for, Doug?
Well, I think of when you're going through any color pair, when you're going through a seal pool, you have to realize that each school has 5 cards that really stand out in each color. There's the charm, the mascot, the legendary creature that it belongs to, the hybrid color spell that goes with that class, and then a regular uncommon that just hits the keyword.
Okay.
In lower hold, what I'm looking for is the mascot, which is Spirit Mascot, which is white and a red for a 2/2 ox that whenever one or more cards leave the battlefield, I put a counter on this creature. So that's one of the premier commons of this archetype. It's the one of the ways that the deck puts a lot of pressure on you,
Mm-hmm.
and the signpost uncommon that really goes with it is the startled relic sloth. Say that 3 times. Oh my goodness.
There's some tough names in this one.
And I can't. I am the worst sayer of names in the world. So bear
Yeah.
with me here.
So startled
Uh,
relic sloth, 2 red white 4/4 trample life link. At the beginning of combat on your turn, exile up to one target card from a graveyard. So good stats. Life link 4/4 life link is awesome. I'm already in love with this, and it continuously triggers the something leaving the graveyard.
Yeah. So I feel like if you have this, then like you can make this archetype work very well. There's a couple of common cards in either white or red that can trigger it multiple times. but this is one of the only cards that like continuously triggers that also gives a very good body. So definitely, if I have Spirit Mascot and the Sloth, I'm very happy to play these color pairs. The charm that goes with it, the Lorehold charm, is also pretty good. It triggers it very well, and also rewards you for having a lot of creatures. So for people at home, Lorehold charm is a red and a white for an instant. You can choose one, either opponent sacrifices a non-token artifact, which is not going to matter in limited.
Not too
Return
much.
target art. Yeah, not too much. Return target artifact or creature spell with CMC 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, which will trigger all your triggers that you want.
Hmm.
And then the last one is all your creatures get +1/+1 and trampled in a turn.
Yeah, this seems like a really nice little package. I mean, all the charms are going to have, more or less a mode that kind of falls in line with what the school wants to do, and then they'll
For
have a
sure.
couple other modes that just have some, uh, good uses for you, whether it's a counter spell or a pump spell or removal spell in the case of the green black one. So, all the charms are going to be kind of probably pretty good. I mean, the sloth reads really well to me. Lifelink is really good and limited. So if this is kind of a key part of what Lorehold's doing, I'm interested in being in the red white color pair.
And I thought that this was going to be one of the most aggressive
Hmm.
archetypes, but I've actually found that to be in our second archetype, which is the Silver Guild, the black white
Yeah,
deck.
Silver Quill is the
Yeah,
black and white school, and that's really kind of where a lot of our aggression kind of comes in. It's an interesting point. It's kind of a good point, I guess. That it is interesting that usually Boros is kind of the beatdown color and a lot of limited, and here we really find that Silver Quill is really kind of taking up that job in Strixhaven.
I think this archetype in the amount of testing that we've done has really stood out as a deck that can really punish the slower mid range and ramp decks. I feel like this is one of the only color pairs that really goes really well underneath the other archetypes,
Hmm.
because again, like we said, Property also targets our own creatures, and we can pump our creatures, so we can get a lot of value with getting our creatures bigger, being able to get extra damage, to be able to kill your opponent's creatures, or be able to make, in some instances, make your creature unblockable, and just get in a lot of damage very quickly. And while doing that, retaining card advantage and things like that. I think this is surprisingly this is the only color pair that I don't really like the mascot. So the mascot in this one is Inkling mascot, which is a white and a black 2/2 Rep T. Whenever you cast instant sorcery that targets a creature, it gains flying and surveils one. So the other mascots usually it gets bigger when you do the thing of the college. This
Hmm.
one, not really. It just gets flying. It just becomes a 2/2 flyer half the time. I'm not really interested in this card. I think the power level of this archetype really goes with the Premier Uncommon, which is Snooping Page, one white and a black, 2/3. Rep RT. When you rep RT, it can't be blocked this turn, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card and lose a life.
Okay, yeah, I like that. That sounds pretty good. It is interesting that the Inkling mascot does seem a little bit weaker for sure compared to the lower
Mhm.
hold one, right? Just getting a counter and getting bigger every time is pretty interesting. Where this is just like, hey, here's some evasion and surveil feels kind of tacked on. I feel like that probably in testing or in production, this was just gets flying because it's an Inkling, and that's kind of what Inklings are in Strixhaven. And then at some point they're like, hey, this is pretty weak. Let's just tack on Surveil. That feels kind of ham fisted, I guess, a little bit there. But the Snoopy page though, that feels like something that's kind of worth being here and doing the repartee thing. Hitting for that and drawing card is definitely pretty nice.
So far in testing, that cards felt really strong, and
Hmm.
again, it's you're doing the thing that Civil Quill wants to do, Repartee, but it also rewards you just having an unblockable guy with also card advantage, and it really pushes home how aggressive and grindy this color pair could really be.
Yeah, it's kind of nice because you're kind of naturally just like, okay, well, I've got my 2/3. I want to get their blocker out of the way. Let me kill your thing, and now I get to draw a card for my trouble off of my 3 drop is pretty nice. So yeah, this it's going to curve really well and use removal spells really nicely to kind of do that.
Yeah.
Any other thing we want to kind of highlight here with the Silver Quill before we try to jump on to maybe the next college?
Yeah. I do want to spend the time on one of the marquee uncommon sorceries for this archetype. That's
Mm.
Killian's Confidence.
Yeah, Killian's Confidence is white and a black. It's a sorcery. Target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Draw a card, and then it has this other kind of mode or this other option here. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you may pay a hybrid, white or black. So it's just a single mana, but it's a hybrid, white or black
Mhm.
mana. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to your hand. So this, like you're saying there, this is kind of the engine that keeps you having enough pump spells around to keep doing the key mechanic here for Silver Quill.
For sure, and again, it's also replaces itself both by paying the mana and by drawing a card. It can really apply a lot of pressure early and have a good card count in your hand to get through the mid game as well.
And it plays super well with the page, right? The page getting
Mhm.
unblockable. Now I have this little mini combo happening where I'm drawing two
Mhm.
cards with the confidence in the page, and I'm getting in for damage. So yeah, this is and if you have anything else that's triggering off of your spells as all this is kind of happening, you really kind of create a nice little package here.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so let's move on to I don't know if this is my favorite school, but historically, is my jam. So Prismari, what does Prismari want to do? Cast some spells? Is that really it? Is that all we could come up with for Prismari in Strixhaven?
Uh, I know this is a revolutionary idea for the color identity for sure, but no. Prismari is just a mid-range tempo deck that's trying to get to the mid to late game and cast those CMC 5 or greater spells, baby. That's all they're
Okay,
trying to do. I think what's really interesting is because when you just say that out loud, trying to cast 5 CMC instant sorceries, that
not usually
sounds
a good place to
terrible.
be. Yeah, that's not usually a good place
No,
you want to be.
yeah, but the thing is the color identity of blue red is really good at producing extra mana to get to that 5 mana threshold.
Hmm.
Also has a lot of good flashback cards, and so you can constantly trigger Opus. And another thing that we said earlier is that Opus is triggered just by casting a spell anyway. So even just getting the front half of some of these Opus cards can be really beneficial.
Yeah, because some of the triggers, some of the benefits are you played a spell. Here is a bonus, but if it happens to be the 5 mana value or greater, you get more of that bonus or something else on top of it. Kind of is that a good kind of quick recap?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the key uncommons for this color is Spectacular Sky Whale.
Okay. So
Woo!
the Skywell is two blue and a red. So that's 4 mana for a 1/4 flying. Opus, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, this creature gets +3/+0 until end of turn. If 5 or more mana were spent to cast that spell, put 3 +1/+1 counters on this creature instead. So, yeah, you can play a lot of cheap stuff. What we've kind of seen before in some of these is it spell decks. But this says, hey, if you make it a big spell, a permanent +3/+3 is huge on this flying body. So this feels like a pretty big one. And another thing that kind of ties all that together, like you were saying, with the mana, like, hey, where do I get all the mana to cast all these expensive 5 minute spells? The abstract paint mage is kind of an important part of that. So that's
Hmm.
the hybrid creature spell of the color pair. So that one is a blue, a hybrid red or blue, and a red. So 3 mana, one of which is the hybrid. So 3 mana, 2/2. At the beginning of your first main phase, add a blue and a red. Spend this mana only to cast instant sorcery spells. So it just gives you 2 mana every first main phase that you can use to cast all your big spells. So that feels like kind of a big boost for what this color pair is trying to do.
And a lot of the big spells are like either producing multiple bodies in the form of 3/3 flying elemental creatures, or being able to kill a creature and draw a card like Stress Stream. Stress Stream is a instant 3 blue and a red. Stress Stream deals 5 damage to up to one target. Then you look at the top two cards, put one of those in your hand, and the other at the bottom. So a lot of these 5 minute CMC spells also are very good at replacing themselves and being able to interact with the board, so that when you get to this threshold to be able to start interacting in a meaningful way,
Hmm.
it has a lot of ways to catch you up for sure.
Yeah, I like that. Like, so you have a lot of conditions you have to meet there. One, I need to keep having a bunch of 5 minute spells in my deck, but I also it's limited, and I just can't. I don't want to die with a bunch of 5 minute cards in my hand. So how do I get there? Okay, here's a few mana things. And then once you're at that point, okay, well I've survived to this point. I've got some mana happening. Here's a couple of spells, and they replace themselves. so that I can keep pumping out my 5 mana value things and opus on all of my important permanents. So it feels, this one feels a little tough. Like I think when it lines up and it probably you end up with a really strong version of this deck, I think it'd probably be really good. But it feels like
Yeah.
one of the maybe an archetype that could be a little harder to pull off, or
Mm.
especially as we're inexperienced and we're trying to learn this set a little bit. That maybe we build some of our Prismari decks a little wrong.
I think this is going to be like a one of those archetypes that at the beginning of the first 2 weeks it's going to have a very low win rate,
Hmm.
and then as like the PT happens, and after the PT, like the LCQs, you're going to see this win rate kind of go up as people kind of figure out the exact mix of spells and themes that you want.
Yeah.
Um, but I think if you're a very gifted or very experienced drafter or seal producer, I think like you're gonna guess on this deck very quickly and
Hmm.
kind of force it because it becomes super fun and the games get very interesting. So I think this
I
is
can
like
see
a
that.
very low floor but a very high ceiling. Whereas Silver Quill felt like a very high floor and an even higher ceiling.
Okay. So that covers a little bit of Prismari for us. Next, we've
Mhm.
got Witherbloom, which is pretty much just caring about gaining life. Like whatever, that's our thing here. We just want to gain a little life, and as we do that, we get paid off for it in a couple different ways. So, what do you think is kind of the hallmark here in Witherbloom? Where should we start?
I think the main things that you need for this archetype are just kind of the value creatures, like you said. This is an archetype that's supposed to be pretty grindy and synergistic. So if you don't have a lot of ways to gain life, your deck's going to feel very anemic.
Hmm.
Um, I think one of the main things that you kind of need is you kind of need a good payoff, and I think the two main payoffs for this are the marquee common, which is the pest mascot, and the uncommon marquee old growth educator.
Okay, so let's start with the mascot because that's something we've
Mm,
talked about for each one of these for the most part. The pest mascot is one black and a green, so that's 3 mana for a 2/3 pest ape. It has trample, and whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So
mm.
definitely something that can grow pretty large and get out of control, especially with it having trample to give once it turns into a five, a 5/6 or 6/7,
Yeah.
7/8. It gets pretty messy there. And then Old Growth Educator, that is 2 green and a black. So it's 4 mana for 4/4 Tree Folk Druid. Has Vigilance and Reach, and it has Infusion. Whenever this creature enters, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it if you gain life this turn. So now I've got a 4 mana 6/6 Reach Vigilance potentially if I've had a way to gain life. So, one of the questions I kind of asked earlier was how easy is it to really gain life each turn? Do we think that there's enough ways that Witherbloom is creating these pest tokens to kind of give us all of that, or is this one that's going to be another one that's going to be kind of hard to really have that life gain often?
I again to kind of go back to the beginning. I one thing that I said was that this might be a set that you have to like choose a lane early and go with
Mhm.
it. And I think Witherbloom, you have to be in it pretty early because you need a mass quantity of ways to gain life. You need mass quantity ways to make pests. You need to be able to sculpt your deck in a way that you can gain life either every turn or every other turn. And so I don't think this is like one of the color pairs that you could like switch into late in
Mhm.
pack one or early pack two. I think it's like kind of an all or nothing thing because it does require a lot of resources. But if you can get it to function, the ceiling is going to be pretty high. They're going to have a very strong deck, but you can also get a very large set of anemic decks with this color pair.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because this, I would say, the first look through here, this color pair kind of scares me because it does feel like it's going to be tough to do that, and we'll see as time goes on if we can um, enable those life gaining triggers to those infusion triggers to happen often enough. But if I have to use my Witherbloom charm just to call out another card, the Witherbloom charm is green and a black for an instant. Choose one. You may sacrifice a permanent. If you do, draw 2 cards. You gain 5 life. Destroy target non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. If I have to use my Witherbloom charm just to gain 5 life, just so I can like have this other effect happen, that feels really bad. Like I don't want to use a full card to be able to trigger to make my old growth educator better. Um, that's just not a winning recipe for limited. So I guess time will tell to see how Witherbloom plays out. If there's enough ways to really get those infusion triggers without having to jump through a bunch of hoops. But
Yeah.
that we'll see.
Yeah, the main way is through pests, and creatures are easy to kill. It's a 1/1 that when it
Mhm.
attacks you gain life, like we said earlier. And I mean, it's pretty easy to block, pretty easy to kill. And if that is your main way to constantly gain life to get infusion going, then this might not be the best
Yeah, it
color
just may
for you.
not come together.
And I think we have one more school to go
Yeah,
through.
let's jump to Quandrix. So Quandrix is kind of the blue green, and that they're all about ramp and some fractals. That's kind of their big thing. That's the kind of token that these guys make. What is happening here with Quandrix?
Yeah, essentially they're mostly a blue green value ramp deck. So pretty much with Quandrix so far, they're trying to get to the late game through mana ramp and be able to cast big, very large X spells or large creatures. I do think that they are the most unexplored in my early testing,
Mhm.
but I do think that their mascot is probably one of the stronger mascots, the factual mascot.
Yeah, so Fractal mascot is 4 green blue, so 6 mana for a 6/6. It is a fractal elk. It has trample, and whenever this creature enters, tap target creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. So 6 mana 6/6 with trample that stuns something. Pretty kind of straightforward, bread and butter, limited card. Why are we excited about this one?
It just has a good ETB and it's just a very good body for the cost. Uh, I think that on average that this archetype's going to be able to cast it on turn 4, turn 5, and if you're able to cast it that early, it's going to take over the game pretty quickly. And if you have other ways to recast it from the graveyard, to be able to bounce it and replay it, I think it could really take over a game. It's definitely the best stats out of the other mascots, and it doesn't require any setup when compared to the other mascots.
Yeah, it's kind of like I am a good card on my own, and I don't have to jump through some extra
Mhm.
hoops.
I am elk. I will elk you.
Yeah. It looks like Quandrix also looks like it kind of just naturally works by itself without having to jump through extra hoops, like we were saying with Witherbloom. Quandrix, these are just natural good limited mechanics of I ramp, I play bigger thing, I play bigger X spell that
Mhm.
gives me more resources, gains me more life, draws me more cards, makes bigger kind of progressively bigger creatures, bigger threats. That's just kind of a pretty stock limited strategy, or just I'm playing ramp, right? That's pretty
Yeah.
straightforward. So I think I kind of like the way that Quandrix probably rolls out the gate. So we'll
Mhm.
see how that ends up
Yeah.
working.
Yeah. I also think that it uses the increment mechanic the best
Hmm.
because like it does want to cast those high mana CMC spells in the mid to late game. And I think the best increment card for this set so far is the Cuboid Colony, the blue green signpost card for this color pair.
Yeah, so the cuboid colony is the blue and a green for a 1/1 insect. It has flash, flying, and trample and increment. So,
Mm,
again, a reminder for everyone, increment is when you play a spell that is greater than its power or toughness, it gets a +1/+1 counter. So it's a good point there that, Quandrix has the ability to go up the curve really high with some X spells, and naturally has this. We're ramping as we get up the curve here. That's going to really allow your increment creatures to really kind of become large and in charge, and kind of maybe take over the game. So, like, yeah, starting on 2 with the colony and just letting it just grow every turn. This flying and trample is going to be this card's gonna win some games if you get to really dump some counters on it.
yeah. Plus on a side note, I love its art. I love how it's just an actual just cube
It's just
of
a cube
these
flying at you.
that's gonna murder you.
It's kind of awesome art. Go check it out.
But lastly, I think we just wanted to touch a little bit about Converge because there's not really like a set, like
Yeah.
this is the Converge deck, because really Converge all depends on what Converge spells and what colors you get. But I think most Converge decks are going to really shine with the green as
Yeah.
its base color because you have Studious First Year, Environmental Scientists, and Shared Roots that all are able to find a basic of any type, so it really helps get Converge going and be able to get those color requirements.
Yeah, there's not like a roadmap for doing Converge, right? Like you said, it's just going to be really dependent on what I end up opening, what gets passed to me, what are the leftovers that my Quandrix guy on my left, and then the Lorehold guy on my right. Whatever you kind of get left over, that's what your converged deck is going to end up looking like. But a lot of them are going to start with that base green for the color fixing, and so Studious first year. So we'll highlight that one because I do think that that one's going to be pretty important. But I also think it's going to be a card that you're going to be fighting the Quandrix guys for probably too, because it's kind of a good card there to enable the ramping. So Studious first year is G for a 1/1, so just one mana for a 1/1. It is a bear wizard, and it enters the battlefield prepared. And the spell that's attached to it is Rampant Growth. So one in a G sorcery, search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So you automatically have access to the Rampant Growth because it enters prepared. And if you have a ways to keep preparing this, that lets you kind of keep going up the chain with more Rampant Growth. That's kind of enticing for my Quandrix stuff, but also some of the big converge cards that you could end up with here too.
Yeah, and it definitely lets you splash like a third color in your like Quandrix deck or your Witherbloom deck for sure. Time will tell how good this card is, but definitely this type of card really reads well when first examining the set for sure. Plus,
Hmm.
again, not to put too much stock into the art, but he's just a dapper gentleman. So dapper. He's just chilling.
Pretty sharp looking first year. I mean, I don't think Harry quite looked like that in his first year.
Oh no, he was scrawny. For
Yep.
sure. But I do think that if you do end up being in Converge, that you're gonna need one of the archaics, the colorless uncommons
Hmm.
avatars.
That's going to
Um,
give you a lot of the power lower, right?
yeah, I think the first one that really pops in my mind is the Sundering Archaic.
So that is the 6 mana avatar. So 6 generic is a creature avatar. It's a 3/3 converge. When this creature enters, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls with mana value less than or equal to the number of colors of mana spent to cast this creature. Then it has another line of text: pay to put target card from a graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library. So kind of an expensive Flametongue Kavu, Banisher Priest type card. Just
Mhm.
6 mana 3/3 exile their guy. Still pretty good, but if you're ramping and you're getting those extra colors, this could be pretty powerful.
Yeah, the Transcendent Archaic has a better stat line for sure.
Yeah, that's the 7 mana one. So this is the 7 generic for a 6/6 vigilance converge. When this creature enters, you may draw X cards, where X is the number of colors of mana spent to cast the spell. If you draw one or more cards this way, discard 2 cards. So it is optional. You don't have to deck yourself, I guess, if you spend, I don't know what scenario you're in where that happens, but you do have to spend the mana. You can't just reanimate this and draw a bunch of cards. But
Mhm.
yeah, this seems like a really good payoff for ramping and getting a lot of those colors out, and then all of a sudden I just refill off of this, and I get a 6/6 vigilance for my trouble for it too.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. And I even think that this card will see play in two color pairs. I like that if you're needing top end. Because even in at worst, if you're casting a two different colored mana, it's a 6/6 for 7 that Faithless Lootings.
Yeah,
And if you're like flooding out, it could really help you get some gas. So I don't think it's going to be as powerful in the two color decks, but I still think it's playable in those two color decks, the top end.
it is still playable, right? It's still a 7 mana 6/6 vigilance. Like, yeah, that's probably not something I want too often, but and that's where those like off color dual lands that I mentioned earlier are going to really show up and shine. If you have a way to, okay, well now I can actually go up a card here. I can draw 3, discard 2, even if I'm only making 3 different colors. That lets you really dig through some flooding, or just I've got a couple of dead cards. Maybe you've got a couple of those bad increment cards that aren't really good at this point in the game. So just filtering through some stuff is always going to be useful.
I definitely think next time on the next episode, we'll talk a little bit more about the special guests. We kind of ran out of time this time around,
Definitely.
but there are some special guest card and mystical archive cards. So all my pre-releasers and RCQs this weekend playing limited, just be aware that every pack will have a mystical archive, whether it's common, uncommon, or rare.
Hmm.
Um, and there are some powerful ones in there. There is Armageddon, there is a Chroma's Will,
Psychotic
uh,
Rift. Those are going to be
Psychonic
big,
Rift.
big impact to your limited game. Yeah, and if you end up in a sealed pool that's got a bunch of really good ones like that, that's going to be a tough sealed pool to beat. So yeah, mystical
Yeah.
archives, one per pack. Be aware of that. It's going to really change and shake up a lot of stuff. Um, Hopefully, we'll have a chance next on the next episode. We'll maybe try to cover some of that. Anything else before we get out of here, Doug?
Not really. Just remember, if you get a basset hound, don't spoil it because then it thinks it can do whatever it wants.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for sticking around with us and listening to this. If you like some unlimited content, let us know. We'll keep making some of this, and we'll try to thread the needle between back and forth between some modern and constructed and stuff. But felt like this was a really good topic for this week. You know, RCQs are coming up. You're going to have some sealed ones. Hopefully, I'm playing in one Saturday, so this was helpful for me. So
Thank you so much, guys. Make sure if you have any questions or you like us, make sure to comment on us. We'll soon be going on to the Apple app as well, and a
mhm.
YouTube channel coming shortly. So for now, thank you so much for supporting us on Spotify, but we will be diversifying.
Yes.